Hello and welcome to this mid-season catch-up with the Gaffer. Thanks for your time this afternoon. I know you've been busy. How are you doing?
Yeah, well, thanks, Luke. Long trip away to Torquay, but back on the grass this morning with the lads. So back in the swing of things.
Let's get straight into it. Obviously, one of the big pieces of news from the club was Alan Jackson. The kit man has left the club. What can you tell us about that?
It's something we would have liked to announce officially and sort of give him the send off that he deserves, and I'm sure we will do that in the coming days. But it's sad to see him go. Obviously, I've worked with Alan slightly longer than just the 3.5 years at Halifax, because we were at Oldham together as well. So we've worked closely for a while, and we would consider each other friends now, over and above colleagues. So it is a sad day to see him go, but I don't think it's any secret. He's not been in the best of health over Christmas, and I think just that time to reflect and think about how he spends his time has maybe led to him thinking his time's up at Halifax Town, which is a great shame for us all, but fully respect the decision and the reason behind the decisions, and we look forward to welcoming him down back at the Shea as a fan now, and hopefully cheering the lads off from the stands.
Of course, looking onto the pitch now, and obviously you've obviously come under a bit of criticism from the fans over the course of the season. One of the biggest ones has been with sort of the tactical setup and the style of play. Can you just talk us through your thinking behind it?
Yeah, well, we've got a style and a people mock, but we've got an identity that we want to implement. We want to be, but that's been challenging. Clearly, the early part of the season, it took us time rather to find our feet with the new squad and find out how we were going to get the best out of those players we'd brought in. Once we did that, I think fans started to appreciate what we were doing and the way we were playing. There was a lot of praise, and I think they enjoyed a lot of games around the York City game at home, Dagenham. Some of the great results we forget about against Oldham, against Chesterfield, and the away performance at Solihull. I don't think there was a great deal of criticism then around style and what we were trying to do. In fact, I think what people tell me is there was quite a lot of praise. So it's been a challenging season so far, and I think there are a number of factors that feed into that. Player availability. I think there's only one occasion, I believe, that we've been able to name the same starting 11 in consecutive games, and that's a challenge other teams aren't having to face. I look across the starting 11s at most of the teams in the league every weekend, and there's an awful lot of consistency there. We've not been fortunate enough to have that yet this season for a variety of reasons. So the style's there in moments. It's not been there as consistently as we would like. Absolutely, we hold our hands up, and it's something we want to put right, especially away from home. But I think that style and that identity that they've seen in the last 7 games at home that have yielded 6 wins and a draw, it's a stern critic who would criticise that type of form.
And of course, certainly recently, you mentioned it briefly there's been plenty of injuries and sickness throughout the squad, which I'm sure is just as frustrating for you as it is for the fans.
Yeah, it is. We're very serious about trying to implement a style and build an identity for the club and make sure that we recruit players who can fit into that. And it's very challenging when you've got certain areas of the pitch where you're all of a sudden without players who you would consider regular starters. We've had it across the back line a number of times, which has meant we've had to change shape, which then affects how you play. We've then had it more recently in midfield. We've got the likes of Luke Summerfield, who's clearly quite ill and missed games recently. Kean Spence had a belated start to the season because of niggles that he was carrying, and again he's experiencing those niggles again. Now we're into January, so Matty Warburton's had a stop-start season. So certain areas of the pitch, it seems, were undermined all at once. At one time it was the back line. Now it seems to be more so in midfield. But we're missing a good number of important players. Those I've mentioned. There's also the likes of Jack Hunter who's ill. We've got Jamie Stott who's got a fractured cheekbone. We've not been without our challenges in terms of being able to get players out, and that's not an excuse. It's a fact that important players for us have missed large portions of the season. People, if they think back, will remember Jesse Deborah missed November. Don't think he played a game in November, and then also had a spell on the sidelines at the end of December. So it'd be really good if we could get a stable squad and a stable starting 11 over the next weeks, and hopefully the fans will start to see the benefits of that and what we can do once we do actually have that luxury.
And of course, being in January now, there's always that transfer speculation. And whilst you won't be able to reveal everything, what can you tell us about any potential incomings?
Yeah, we're definitely moving forward. There's an awful lot of hard work goes on behind the scenes trying to make sure that we get people in and we get the right people who fit into our pay structure, people who can add to us over a longer period than just a few weeks. I know, again, some clubs will have the luxury of bringing in an expensive player for the short term to try and help them kick on in a shorter period. We look to plan slightly longer term because it makes more financial sense. So that's what we're trying to do, is get the right people over the line who will contribute not just in the short term but for a longer period and hopefully become assets to the club. People have seen it in recent years with some of those names I've mentioned, the Jesse Deborahs and Keane Spences of the world, and that's what we're looking to try and replicate. So there are some names that I'm sure will be rumoured who are getting fairly close. We've got one young player who will come in and will be signed this week, with another one who we're trying to talk to their current club very closely with and come to an agreement that works for both clubs and the player moving forward. And then there's a third, again, in a similar situation, who hopefully will start to gain some momentum come the weekend. But obviously we're scrapping against some clubs with different assets and different resources at their disposal. So we've got to make the big sell on what we can offer, and hopefully they see the stadium and they see the fan base, and the fans the way they can be at the Sheikh, and can be an added selling point for us.
And of course, what about any potential outgoings as well?
Yeah, there's players in the squad who will look to go elsewhere to get their football. I think we've looked at getting Sam Smart and Sam Minahan's names out there. The two lads have worked incredibly hard and remained very professional, even though they're frustrated and desperate to play football. So their names are out there. As and when we secure any new signings, that will mean that clearly there'll be an opportunity for others to go out and get football elsewhere. But we, as we've just discussed in some depth, we don't want to leave ourselves in a situation where we're too light on numbers. And we have some players in the physio room, the Matty Warburtons and Keane Spences, who've got niggles, but we're not really clear on a timeline as to when they're going to be back. So we need to make sure that we don't leave ourselves in a position where we can't name a full squad for a match day. So we want to get some incomings before we let any more go out.
Of course, up next is the FA Trophy game against Harrogate, and obviously you mentioned after Saturday's game that it was an opportunity for some of those players who haven't featured as much to get some game time. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, definitely. And there are players in the squad who've remained professional, been patient in waiting for their opportunity, and who deserve that chance now to go and seize a shirt and try and give themselves a chance to hold on to it and get a run of games. So we clearly can't rip it up and field a whole new 11, because we've still got to work on building some partnerships. In key areas of the pitch, there are players who need to play together to build those partnerships and help move us forward. But definitely there'll be opportunities for 2 or 3 players to come in, start a game, and stake a claim for a starting position for Wealdstone.
And finally, just how important is it to have a good run in the trophy this year, especially after the disappointment in the FA Cup?
Yeah, in recent years we've had a few disappointments in the cup competitions, haven't we? And this year going out to the FA Cup was a disappointment. But we're excited about the trophy. You know, we want to do well. We want to do well in every game we play. And let's face it, you know, I'm not going to claim that we go into any game without every intention of trying to win it and going through a thorough process in trying to prepare it the best as we can to try and do that. But with it being a cup game and with it being the trophy, the club's obviously got a strong history in it in recent years, in the recent history, and we want to build on that. We want to try and etch ourselves into the history of the club by going all the way, if the truth be known. But first of all, we've got to overcome Harrow, and we'll be working incredibly hard to try